Welcome aboard, ladies and gentlemen. My name is CCaptainX or Tyler, and today we're going to talk about field of view or FOV. And we're going to talk about the differences from playing from the low end of field of view versus the high end. And then we're also going to get in and discuss affected versus independent ADS. Now, before I get going too far, I do want to say this does not work for console. I'm sorry, guys. Is only a PC thing, and I'll be honest, there is absolutely an advantage to being able to adjust field of view, but it is what it is. So the way this video is going to work is I'm going to first take a little bit of time to explain what field of view is and what it does. We're going to talk about the differences of should you play on the max field of view of 120 or should you back down a little bit, maybe 100, 110, things like that. I'm going to show several different in-game examples of the benefits and the disadvantages to playing on higher FOV versus lower FOV. And then we're going to go down and also show the difference from affected to independent ADS and also talk about the advantages of that and show several in-game examples of when one is better compared to the other. If you're new to my channel, I do a lot of videos covering settings, loadouts, strategies, things like that for Warzone. I do stream over on Twitch as well at twitch.tv/tcaptainx if you're wanting to check me out live or if you want to ask questions over there. And if you have any other questions about other settings videos or Warzone particular questions, drop them below in the comments and maybe I'll do a video about it. At the time of this video, I'm sitting around about 700 subscribers on YouTube, and I'm really making it a goal to get to 1,000 here soon. So if you want to support me, hit that subscribe button. All right, guys, so let's first explain what field of view is. So currently I'm on the max field of view of 120. And what that does is it's going to widen my camera angle out. We go into our options here. We go to general, and let's turn our field of view down to 80. And you're going to see I am much more zoomed in. Now 80 is basically what console, the default of console is. So when you're more zoomed in, the target is a lot larger compared to on 120, but I have significantly less peripheral vision. So one thing a lot of people will say is that PC players can actually run faster than console players. That is not true. It is simply an illusion that field of view gives and that a wider field of view will give. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put side by side here on the screen of 80 FOV on the left and 120 FOV on the right. And I'm going to show you running the same distance and I'm going to end up getting there at the exact same time. But you're going to notice that the 80 field of view looks a lot slower compared to the 120. The other thing people will say is that PC players have less recoil, and that is again an illusion that field of view creates. So here I'm going to show you 80 field of view shooting at a target from the same distance versus 120 with affected ADS. And we're going to get into the affected versus independent ADS here in a little bit. So you'll notice in the comparison that the recoil patterns are identical. The difference is when you're more zoomed in on 80 field of view, the amount of change in your monitor is a lot more, if that makes any sense. Basically, because when you're zoomed out in a higher field of view, it gives the illusion that you're moving a less amount on the screen versus when you're way zoomed in, it's changing a lot more. Hopefully that makes sense. But at the end of the day, wider field of view doesn't actually change your recoil. It simply makes it a smaller amount of your monitor or your screen. All right, so now that you guys have an understanding of what field of view is, let's discuss what is the best field of view to play on. Now, at the end of the day, this is completely preference. There, you could play on 80 and you could be amazing at the game. You could play on 120 and be amazing at the game. But in my recommendation, I think you should, if you have the option, if you play on PC, you should be playing at least 100 field of view. Basically, the wider you are, the larger your field of view is, the smaller your target is. That does mean you have to be more precise. However, that also means that the amount of recoil you have to control is in theory less because it's changing. Like I said, it's a smaller degree of the monitor that is changing. So smaller target to aim at, but less amount of pull down on your thumbstick or on your mouse if you're at a wider field of view. Now, if you're new to PC and you're just trying to figure out what field of view you should play on and you've been playing on console for a long time, I don't necessarily recommend jumping straight to 120 field of view. It will feel very awkward going all the way from 120 and you're going to feel super fast if you've been used to playing on 80. If you're brand new, I'd recommend starting somewhere between 100 and 110. Now, me personally, when I started at 110, played for about a month or two, and then I made the switch to 120, and I've been very happy with 120, and I've been there ever since. But there are still benefits to playing at field of view less than 120. Basically, what you need to decide is what are you comfortable with at how small your target is going to be. But if you are playing on a smaller field of view, making your target larger, you're losing out on peripheral vision. If 120 feels like you're too far away from everything, then turn it down a little bit. But if you're having a lot of trouble with recoil control, then I'd recommend going higher, closer to 120. In my opinion, that extra peripheral vision at 125 is one of the most important things you can have in the game, and one of the big reasons why PC has a massive advantage over console. There's been several times where I'm playing with friends who are on console when I'm spectating them, where in their view they don't see an enemy, but in my view I see an enemy at their far left or far right, and I have to call that out for them because they simply don't have the peripheral vision that I do on PC. Now let's explain what affected versus independent ADS is. So currently I'm on 120 field of view and I'm on affected. When I zoom in, you're going to see that my camera does zoom in a little bit, but not a lot. If we go to our settings and under field of view, if we change that to independent, you're going to see I zoom in a lot more when I ADS. There's a big difference there. And the higher field of view setting you're playing on, the more you're going to notice that difference of zoom. Now, for me personally, I think this big zoom is almost distracting or disorienting. So if you're playing on 120, I think it's a little bit hard to play on independent because there is a huge zoom and it almost like throws me off in a way. Now, if we go back to affected, you'll see again that this is a much smaller difference. Now, most pro players or top players do play on affected. There still are absolutely a handful of players that play on wide field of view, like 110 plus, and play independent and are phenomenal players. There's nothing wrong with that. Basically, if you're on independent, you're losing that kind of hidden recoil control stat that we talked about with the wider field of view. Because essentially what independent does is when you're zoomed in, it's going to be giving you that 80 field of view feeling instead of the wide 120 feel. So if you want purely the wider angle for when you're moving around to catch to have better peripheral vision, but you don't want your target to feel small, then play on independent. But if you want that help with that recoil control and keeping your field of view wide when zoomed in, then you should play on affected. Now, if you watch all that, one thing you might have noticed is the lower field of views on independent, there is less of that big zoom in effect. So if you really like independent, you may not want to play on 120 because there's more of that zooming in effect, which to me is very disorienting. So one thing I'll say is after myself going through that gameplay and testing all the different field of views along with affected versus independent, I absolutely do not like independent. Now, at the end of the day, like I said, this is personal preference. I've been playing on 120 and affected for a very long time, so that's what I'm used to. I don't like independent because of that big zoom in effect. I personally dislike that a lot. For me, I like between 110 and 120 field of view affected. And that is what I would recommend to somebody who is looking for the best field of view. Now, whether you want to go 110, 115, 120, that is all personal preference. If you're coming from console, if you've been on console for a long time, I'd probably recommend starting at 110 or even 100, 105, somewhere in there. At the end of the day, to give my final recommendation, I would say 120 field of view affected ADS. But like I've said multiple times, this is preference. I hope this video was helpful, guys, and I hope I did a good enough job explaining this and tried to be as clear as possible. If you have more questions, please feel free to drop them below in the comments or come say hi to me on Twitch. I do stream Wednesday through Saturday, typically late at night. Feel free to ask me anything over there, even if it's not field of view related. Anything, come ask me. Guys, I appreciate you watching this video. If it was helpful, give it a like. If it sucked, then dislike it. And if you want more content like this in the future, then make sure to subscribe. Have a great day, guys. Absolutely, Fred.